Hey, how's it, Roger? How you doing?
No, good. Thanks, Patrick. And you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. So here we are, next episode. Um, Lots to learn, but it's been an exciting learning experience.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's I look forward to it every week, and looking forward to just evolving it as we go. So let's kick it
I,
off. Round
I
number
think
two.
maybe what's important is maybe we just find out a little bit about each other so that people who are watching can learn a little bit more about us. So if you don't mind, I'll ask you a few questions and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, that sounds good, Pat.
Okay, brilliant. So tell me about the ocean and your attraction to the ocean. Where did that all begin?
It's a good question. It was something I grew up on the east coast of Natal, which you're very familiar with, KwaZulu Natal in South Africa. My father was actually he wasn't he was a spear fisherman, like not I mean, he had a spear gun in the garage. He didn't really spearfish that much, but he was a very keen crayfish, what would you call it, crayfisherman,
Yeah,
or yeah.
yeah.
So he loved crayfishing, and I have great memories of going down to, we lived in Amanzimtoti, of walking down that bluff and collecting mussels, catching crayfish, and then go back up and having a braai and things like that. So I think just from an early age, it was very much, part of our lifestyle. And funny enough, at school, it didn't feature massively. I didn't really get into surfing, although I grew up in Durban. But I did get into surf lifesaving, and I was a very keen swimmer, and I loved swimming and bodyboarding and things like that. So I think there was
I
definitely
suppose
an
that was a way of life in Durban. The beach was, I grew up in Durban the same as you. The beach was central to everything. I remember when moving to Cape Town, you've almost got an ocean on three sides, whereas in Durban, you were either oceans on your left-hand side or your right-hand side. It was pretty simple, but it was always central to wherever you're going. The ocean on the left, ocean on your right. Um, so you got into life saving, and then
well, I was very much into athletics and academics, and you went to university. And it was actually at university that I joined the spearfishing club, and that really ignited my obsession. It didn't just become something that was there; it became an absolute obsession. So spearfishing was really my introduction into deep ocean exploration. Let's call it that, for want of
I,
a better word.
I still have a photo of you posing holding a fish in a red speedo, Roger. I think it
That
was.
that
I,
that was the way, Patrick. I
I,
mean, yeah.
I wasn't your friend then, but friends don't let friends wear red speedos.
No, but then it was the thing, right? Like, it was like, that was the way, that was the way. So
Was it the Baywatch era?
that was actually a red
Oh,
surf
okay.
lifesaving, like
So you
David
weren't trying
Hasselhoff
to
style.
impress Pamela Anderson whilst running along the beach.
Well, kind of, but I kind of, yeah, I very much remember yeah. Anyway, those pictures. But yeah, spearfishing was something that I became obsessed with. I competed on a national level, and I'm that kind of person. When I get into something, I'm just all in, and that's all I wanted to do. As a result, my master's degree suffered. My plan was to get a master's degree. It never happened. I was just spearfishing all the time. And that really kind of laid the foundation. And I think with hindsight, actually set me up for real success in the natural history filming industry, once I discovered that as a career. But that was only 10 years after spending time in corporate.
And you had a corporate career in digital marketing, but the ocean was always calling. But initially you were doing above surface still pictures. It still wasn't under the ocean.
Not really. I mean, my father was a sort of keen amateur photographer. My grandfather was very into photography, but and I remember in 2000 buying a Handycam and filming, filming trips, and it gives you something to do, right? It gives you a mission. I'm that kind of person. I like to be busy. I like to be active, and it also gave me an excuse not to have to engage in conversations because I could just film them rather, and kind of be busy and move around. So,
So
and
sort
I,
of
and I think we can touch on.
hiding behind the camera.
100%. Like, I think that that was a thing. And also, funny enough, hiding in the ocean, because in the ocean, you don't have to have conversations, you don't have to engage with people. But we can touch on that later. But yeah, it was very much, my corporate career. That's what I wanted to do. And I was going to become an attorney. And I was, again, very competitive. So during that period, 10 years in digital marketing and then corporate strategy, yeah, it was, photography was never really something that you would consider as a full-time career. Certainly not cinematography, right? It just wasn't in the playbook in our era at all.
And so where did the decision come from? Where did you decide, okay, this is it? It was it something that had built up over time, or did you just think, I'm at this point in my life where I want a career change, I want to do something different, or how did it come about that you suddenly switched the tie for a tripod?
Look, I wish it could have been, more intentional in that way that you've described it, but it was more I was studying towards my executive MBA at the Graduate School of Business, and I just wasn't really clear about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I was 36 at the time. I had a very good corporate career, but I just wasn't feeling, super fulfilled. I wasn't sure what to do, turned to this executive MBA. And that actually made me realize that my future did not lie in corporate. So ironically, it was this realization that working in big corporations, it's, compromise is a fundamental part of that, right? You're working in big teams. I mean, you'll know all about this. It's a different skill set that you need to develop. You manage through people, you manage up this massive organization. You can't make quick chain, decisions and put them into effect. It's a completely different kind of mindset, which is a function of the size of the organization. So I made a decision then, Pat, that I didn't want to work in corporate, but I had no idea what I actually wanted to do. And so people said to me, "You're so brave for leaving corporate." I'm like, guys, I wasn't brave. I just couldn't do it anymore. I could not do it anymore. And I actually had no plan of what I wanted to do. So, but the crazy thing is when you cut yourself loose and you open yourself up, right? And you'll relate to this, things just start to manifest. It's crazy because suddenly you're receptive to new things. And that's exactly what happened to me. I got a job as an assistant on a natural history shoot because of my spearfishing background. And that's when my whole career, the seeds of my career as a wildlife cinematographer were planted.
And I suppose it's something that I say to my kids is, the question is like, what are you going to do when you finish school? And how the hell does anybody know what they're going to do when they finish school? And I think to your point is it's all about exposure. So if you're in this corporate game and you're in this corporate mindset and you're doing a particular job, you almost have blinkers on because all you can see is what you're doing. And sometimes like it's although you say it wasn't a brave decision, it was a brave decision because you stood back and you stood up and you peeked over the hedge and you're like, okay, I've been running in this narrow lane of mine, and there is more to it. And I think, Roger, it is a brave decision, because most people don't do that. Most people do the 9 to 5 slog, and their dad didn't, and their granddad did it, and nowadays the world is different. But you know, how long ago was that? 20 odd years ago. That
Yeah, that
that
was, yeah, 2020.
that was a big decision to make 20 years ago because people sort of had a job and stuck with it for the rest of their lives.
No, look, it was, and I mean, I am proud of the decision, and it was certainly very difficult. I sacrificed a lot, certainly financially, but I've never really been attached to that type of thing. I don't feel, and that's a form of pressure, right? The status pressure and social pressure to conform. So yeah, I think in that regard, it was a brave decision and a courageous decision. Um, and I'm just very grateful. I still have massive respect for people that are able to operate at high levels in big organizations because it takes an amazing amount of grit and a different type of focus and a different type of application. But certainly for me, in terms of my being and how I operate, it was definitely the right decision.
So when you did that first shoot, as an assistant, did you suddenly think on the back of that is, okay, this is where I'm headed, this is what I want to do, and were you able to sort of map out a path for yourself, or was it still just learning as you were going? Did that sort of open up a world that you didn't know existed, and or were you, okay, I see this and I can see where I want to end. How do I get there? How did that work, Roger?
Well, I had a model. I had role models in the form of Didier Noiro, who was Jacques Cousteau's cameraman, and Doug Anderson, who was one of the top British cinematographers, Justin Maguire as well. These are people that were top of their game, working in the craft, making a living as professionals. I wasn't convinced of the revenue model because having a financial background, I was going, geez, this is risky. You don't always get work. But the lifestyle and I was so enamored with the reality of the job. You're getting flown around the world, you're working in these incredible locations on these seminal series. So it it slowly kind of dawned on me, and that's when I said, right, I want to become one of the best underwater cinematographers in the world. That was back in about 2007. But I knew that I needed multiple revenue streams. And I learned how to hustle, Patrick. I mean, I never did weddings, but I bought a camera and I was shooting. I was going out to events in Cape Town and earning 800 Rand a night, like shooting people's functions and everything that I could do to not have to get a full-time job. Because as soon as you get a full-time job, you can't take a shoot if it comes up.
No, you can't. And so Roger, so you were doing this, you were doing the stills, you decided, this is for me. How did that evolve to move underwater? Because that is really niche. If you think of it, a lot of people are doing wildlife cinematography. A lot of people are filming the surface, but once you go underwater, you're limited by time, by pressure, by the environment, by you can't just go in and say, "Oh, I'm going to film a
Yeah.
shark." It's not as easy as that. So was it your linking with the ocean back from when you grew up in Durban that you naturally went down that route, or was it a conscious decision, as in this is a good business opportunity? If there are more opportunities for me being underwater than on the surface.
It definitely wasn't a business related decision because I remember thinking at the times this is not a wise business decision because of the vagaries of the work and that. But it was actually underwater right from the start because the reason, I mean, my first job was with Justin Maguire topside, but then I very quickly gravitated to assisting Didier underwater. And that worked to my strengths, right? I'm a strong free diver. I've got a lot of experience diving with animals through my spearfishing. So that's why I say my spearfishing career, which, and I spearfished hard, Patrick. I mean, really, really hard. That gave me such an incredible competitive advantage in the underwater filming space because effectively, when you film underwater, you are the drone. You've got to swim. It's very physical. You've got to dive well. So it was always underwater, always underwater. And during that period as well, that's actually where I met Craig and Damon Foster, who I later made My Octopus Teacher with. And we met at a film festival. They were very interested in some ocean trekking that I'd been done with a friend of mine. I don't know if I've
Yeah.
told you about marine trekking at all.
No, no, you haven't.
So that was really when I was in corporate. And again, this talks to this hunger for adventure, this hunger to, live and experience things. So I remember looking at guys like Mike Horn and, guys that were pulling sleds around in the Arctic and things like that and being very impressed by that. So for me, I came up with the idea of pulling a sled in the ocean because I don't know about snow. I grew up in Durban. So a friend of mine, Mitch
That was
Rankin, who was
that was
actually
something we never got in Durban.
No, Mitch Rankin. I don't know if you know Mitch. He was actually, no, he wasn't in the permanent force, but he was a parabat, very fit guy. He was my spearfishing partner. So I came up with the concept of marine trekking. And long story short, we ended up taking two fishing skis up to, uh, so north of Ponta, you get to Hell's Gate, right,
Yes,
which
I
is
know.
the top
Oh,
of
good.
Ponta.
I
Got dropped,
Inyaka Island, between Inyaka
correct.
and Santa Maria. Yeah.
Correct. So we swam out. We got dropped off there. We swam out with our spear guns, pulling these kayaks behind us, and basically spent 8 days swimming down the coast, sleeping on the beach, shooting fish, kind of like a marine
Wow,
trekking
from
concept,
from from Santa Maria through Inyaka, that gap, Hell's Gate, and then heading down south
all the
towards
way down, all the way down to Ponto. Yeah, and we paddled a bit. That was the backup because we run out of water otherwise. But it was that kind of experience, which just gave me such capacity as an underwater cinematographer, because I had the physicality, I had the skills, and I think that definitely it was off that bedrock of physicality. And it's like being a game ranger, right? And then switching, being like a highly experienced game ranger, to filming. It's and there's many South Africans and Africans who have done that as well. So yeah, it was always underwater.
And so what was sort of the pivotal moment where you like, okay, this is it. I'm going to be an underwater videographer. Was it with the filming in the Okavango Delta? I know that was quite pivotal for you, being one of the first to be part of the team that were filming the Nile crocodiles. Was that sort of a pivotal moment?
I think it was, but it actually it was definitely Didier. So Didier Noro, as I said, was Jacques Cousteau's cameraman. I was very enamored with his whole approach. We got on really well. We were actually on the Sardine run. I was assisting him in 2008, and I remember this like it was yesterday. I was shooting a lot of stills of bait balls and things just from the surface, and then I was underwater with him. And he doesn't praise easily, Didier, but I remember him looking at my stills, and he's very critical, you should do this, you should do this. And then one evening, he looked at my stills and he just said, you do not miss. And that was very high praise from him. And basically what he was saying is, you have the ability to get the coverage and to get the critical moments. And I think that really planted a seed in me, Patrick. That it was like, if Jacques Cousteau's cameraman thinks that I can be world class, then I can be world class. It was belief, it was faith, and he might have meant something completely different, but
And
that,
affirmation, I suppose. If
that's
you're
it.
getting that affirmation from one of your heroes who
Yeah,
became a mentor,
yeah.
wow, what a good space to be in.
And that led to, with my relationship with Craig and Damon, we pitched into the Dragon's Lair. So before that, Didi and I went up and I helped him film some crocodiles underwater. We then pitched the story, got the film commissioned. But this whole time, we actually made 3 films together. But this whole sort of time, I was very much seen as an assistant. So I hadn't broken through into, I was doing my apprenticeship essentially. And it was only in 2013 that I was actually given a real opportunity to be the primary cameraman on a series for John Downer called Spy in the Pod. So that's when my career as a actual cinematographer was kind of launched.
I remember speaking to you a couple of times during there. You were up in Mozambique and busy filming dolphins, if I remember correctly, with a spy dolphin.
That's right. No, that's right.
It all sounded very James Bondy.
That's right, Patrick. Because we'd actually met in 2009 or so when I moved up to Durban to do some work with Earth
Correct.
Touch, and that's when I got involved in the tech diving.
And and obviously, one of the great things is My Octopus Teacher. And I remember you saying to me is, oh, you've got this really, amazing creature that you found that's covering itself with bits of plastic to protect itself, but you hadn't really spoken about the story. And was that sort of, did you sort of understand how big that was going to get and where that it all was going to lead? Because I mean, it's it's truly incredible. I don't think there's a person on the planet that you speak to who doesn't know about My Octopus Teacher. And so coming from an assistant cameraman, which you can almost say is in a really short space of time. I know it might not seem like it for you, but people are, they're not found or discovered. But I suppose, the as you said, your spearfishing and your grit and your determination and having the right mentors, that path probably led you to meeting Craig and filming My Octopus Teacher.
Well, I met Craig in 2005, 2006, actually. So it
Oh
was
wow.
early on. Yeah, it was actually early on before I'd even established myself as as anything really. And he was interested in the marine trekking. That's why I mentioned it, because we were going to make a film about me drifting from Madagascar to South Africa on a raft and then filming, it was a crazy kind of concept. So that was
Would you
our
have had
original.
Wilson with you?
Sorry?
Would you have had Wilson with you?
Well, yeah, possibly. So that, but then when I started to get traction in the natural history world and then met Didier and then, all that's the way life works. You have these different kind of connections with people and then you kind of put those together and then you leverage that into a product and things like
No,
that. So
there's that great saying is your network is your net worth.
yeah. very much so. Absolutely. I mean, that's a fundamental thing. So yeah, from 2013 to, it was actually in about 2016 that I approached Craig for Blue Planet 2 for an idea on a sequence that I could shoot for Blue Planet 2. And that's actually when we worked together for 2 years, filming as much as we could in the kelp forest, and created a sequence for Blue Planet 2, which actually is the same octopus. It's the same octopus in My Octopus Teacher. It's what very few people realize.
Incredible. I remember watching it and watching your interview with Sir David Attenborough, which they did sort of as at the end of the My Blue Planet. And I mean that
Making of.
the making of, but yeah, that must have been incredible.
And I remember at the time, talk about pressure. I mean, this is the interesting thing is that, we got the kind of go ahead. I was so determined to succeed, stroke terrified of failing, that's why I said to Craig, Craig, we are going to do whatever it takes. We're going to go every day. We're going to do whatever it takes to film this octopus, because I didn't have the confidence then yet in my ability to deliver a sequence on that level. So, and a lot of the footage, I look at it now and I'm kind of like, whoa, okay, I could definitely do that better. But the reality is that the behavior was so phenomenal. I was learning so quickly, and Craig was learning how to track. So it was what we call in teaching the zone of proximal development, where you're on the verge of failing, but you stretched, you're under pressure, but you're capable of delivering and learning. So it was a seminal time of, for me, that whole period. I was also doing work on Dolphin Reef for Disney, for Keith Scoley. So it was an incredible time of really evolving my craft, using tighter lenses, understanding how to build sequences, how to shoot stories. Yeah, very rich time in my development as a cinematographer. And then, of course, My Octopus Teacher came out, out of that archive, and then that story, that came out in, I think, 2020. And yeah, I mean, had no idea that it was going to be so massive. No idea whatsoever.
And what would you say, Roger, if somebody was listening to this is, this is incredible. It's almost like a fairy tale, the journey you've been on. But that's what we see as outsiders, is like 1 minute you're here, 1 minute you're there. But this has been a lifetime in the coming. What would you say to somebody who's a youngster who's got a talent and feels they want to get into underwater videography? Is it just putting in the hours, putting in the hard work, or what is it? What is it that puts you above everybody else?
I think it's, my advice to answer that question specifically is, it's not just about the cinematography. There's a whole lot of foundational skill sets that you need to develop and that you can focus on. So even though your goal might be to, one day that's what you want to do, it's an evolution. So what I've found is that, what's been wonderful with this career is that it's a coming together of all the things I'm passionate about. I was a very dedicated athlete as a young man. I was a very dedicated academic, and I loved studying. So that's where the ideas and storytelling, which is very important for creativity. Then I had the ocean, which I was very, very committed to. The business, my 10 years in corporate taught me a huge amount about business acumen, entrepreneurship, how to manage clients, how to manage people. So suddenly, when you do find this perfect storm, as it were, where everything comes together, you're perfectly positioned to really, deliver and outcompete most of the people around you. But that's been because of a lifetime of putting effort into a whole number of kind of building blocks, what I call like viability buckets. And those things are generic. They transfer across different sort of disciplines. If I don't care who you are, what job you do, but you need to learn how to manage people well. You need to learn how to manage yourself. Can you manage your temper? Can you manage your focus? These are all foundational skills that you need to learn, and it hasn't come without sacrifice. It's very hard in relationships. You're away half the year. You miss a lot of your kids' birthdays and things. It's
But
not.
I
Yeah.
think if I hear what you're saying is although you're at the pinnacle of your game at the moment, it didn't just, you don't just arrive at the top there. You've got to lay this big foundation. It's almost like that trying, the pyramid as we speak to you. You've laid your foundation. You studied, you were fit, you exercised, you were an avid spear fisherman, you liked the ocean, you were good with finances, you had a corporate career. But this was all building the blocks to reach those steps to where you are. And I suppose there are people who live the dream. We see stories of youngsters who are just at the right space at the right time and they've got a natural talent. But
Sure.
that's not for everybody. And I mean, as you're saying here, you have to build those blocks first so that you can use each of one of those to step up to where you are now.
And I think the key point is that it wasn't intentional, right? Like, and this is what I say to youngsters. They say, "What should I do?" And I'm like, it doesn't really matter. Just do it with passion and do it at the highest possible level. And try and choose things that do have, where you can add value to other people. But I mean, if you are exceptional at anything, really, you can make money out of it, especially now, and, with coaching and online coaching and things like that. I mean, you find a niche, you know, you can sell that, you can commoditize yourself. So I think that's the point, is you don't necessarily have to have a very, very clear idea of what it is, because that job might not even exist right now. The environment changes so fast, but as long as you're applying yourself and you're keeping your momentum going, and you're keeping, that's the critical thing. Is what's amazing with school is that it actually, I mean, not for everyone, but it actually gets you to function at. And I mean, I don't think I've ever been so productive as I was when I was in matric, like sixth form. I mean, it was insane. You're studying for exams, you're competing in provincial athletics, you acting in plays, it's like, it's next level. So the key is to keep that momentum going. And I think that's really important.
And to the world we're living in today is somebody else's wildest dreams. If you think back in saying, well, I remember watching that first Jacques Cousteau, his first underwater videos. I actually missed a plane because of one of his shows.
Really?
The story for another time. But how that's evolved. And I remember somebody walking into the dive center, a sales rep walking in with the first little GoPro camera and thinking, oh, what is this little thing? And then when you looked at the quality of those images, you just thought to yourself, wow, this is incredible. And I suppose how things have evolved, not just having the skills, but keeping up to date with the technology and what is changing and what is available. And I suppose that's all part of it is as you said, when you're at sixth form or final year of school, that you're learning so much, but you never stop learning.
No, no. And I mean, this is the thing, is that you no longer, you train now for viability. So in other words, because the environment's changing so quickly, in a way, it's not about what am I going to become. It's about what skill sets can I develop so that I can continue to evolve as things change and be viable and contribute, right? Because ultimately, making money is about having a purpose and about helping other people. Like, if you're not helping other people, you're not going to be making money. And the more people you can help, the more money you make. And if you can help people at scale, like building software or something like that, then that's obviously an incredible way to wealth creation, because you're solving a problem for individual people at scale. So I think it's incredibly exciting. And I think the whole AI thing as well is it's very, very challenging. But again, it's just another challenge that you need to get on top of.
And so when you look back, what moment would you sort of stand back and if you were giving a speech at your 80th birthday and you were sort of looking back on your life, what would be that one moment that you would like to tell everybody about? What was that one moment you were sort of the most proud of, or the one that you thought, wow, this is all my dreams come true?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I can't recount them all in exact detail, but I mean, I think there is that sense of you know it is important. It is very rewarding when you do get a degree of affirmation, when you feel like you have kind of reached your potential in something, and you get that real affirmation from people, and they kind of give you, and again, I think that's something which is, it's wonderful to achieve that. And I do remember, I mean, it was a false feeling, but I do remember when that on the Great Tide, there was a making of with myself, Didier, and Justin on the Great Tide, which was the sardine run. And it was
Yes.
narrated by David Attenborough. And I remember watching that and hearing him speak my name and just thinking, geez, I've made it, like, that's it. But of course you haven't, right? That's just the beginning of an ongoing effort to prove yourself, to become a proper cinematographer, and of course, as you move through your career, there's other people, there's competitors, there's industry challenges, there's more work than others. But I think I do feel very, yeah, I do feel very fulfilled from that first, I'm calling it the first stage of my life. And now what I'm doing is I'm kind of looking towards, okay, what do I do now in the second half of my life, now that there's less time, and you know what I mean? There's like less time. Um,
No,
and
Roger, I
for
don't know
me,
what you mean.
that's,
You're far older than I am.
but that for me becomes now the real, I feel like I've been very fortunate in savoring a lot of the low hanging fruit, and now it's like, okay, how do you give back? How do you, how do you potentially help people at scale, and how do you enable others to experience the richness of what you've been so fortunate to experience?
It's truly incredible, and it's aspirational. And I know probably there were times where you were sat there alone in in the middle of nowhere, thinking, what the hell am I doing? How am I going to pay next month's bills? And, you know, what, is this what I should be doing?
Wow.
To looking back now and saying, you know, I spoke with, David Attenborough. I have stuff that has inspired, will inspire generations of people and still inspiring. We as a family watched the Parenthood series
Mm.
that's on at the moment here on BBC. And I proudly shared with the children. Oh, that was Roger's footage. Roger was filming the Gannets, and so it's aspirational for people watching it. And they might not know what it takes. And I think sometimes you share with me, the 10 or 15 seconds we might see on a shot on TV has taken years to get to that stage, and taken hours
Sure,
and hours underwater for that
sure.
10 or 15 minutes. So, you can be rightly proud of, where you've come, but I'm sure there were moments where you thought, sure, should I just go back? Is this what I should be doing?
Well, no, they actually weren't, Pat. It is the greatest. I
Really?
mean, it is,
Oh,
to
that's
me, it is the
incredible.
greatest job in the world. And it was more just like you pinch yourself. You go like, is this actually like, is this really happening? And in fact, Doug Anderson and I, a really good friend of mine, I mean, we were both often would reflect, we did shoots together about, just really appreciating the opportunity, because this is one of the things, humans, you take things for granted, and you don't appreciate the moment, and you live in the future or you live in the past, and then suddenly it's all gone, and yeah, that's something I'm becoming just sort of increasingly aware of, is just appreciating, what you have every day. Do not, it's the whole Stoic notion of live each day like it's your last. Do not assume that you've got it tomorrow. And of course, I had that scare with my heart condition, which, was a massive wake up call for me, and made me realize, like, you just cannot assume you're going to be here tomorrow.
No, it's true. I mean, you can't live recklessly. You can still plan for tomorrow, but don't
Correct.
stop doing what.
Yeah.
Don't put
Yeah.
things off because there will be a
Yeah.
better time
Yeah.
tomorrow. As
That's,
you rightly done, is now is the time. Now is the best time to do what you want to do.
yeah. No, exactly. So yeah, it's been and that's very much kind of led, I think, to our collaboration, because I think we both at very similar points where, we've had these sort of inflection points. I mean, look, I'm still shooting, I'm still hungry to shoot and work on projects, but I kind of want to do it more on my own terms now. And I think, that doing things on your own terms, having that degree of sovereignty, is something that both you and I share. And I think we're both putting ourselves under an immense amount of pressure, right, in order to transform into that kind of future us, and
Exactly,
I
and
think
I
that,
and, and I think that was part of it. That's part of our giving back. Is we've both had, lives underwater. We've both had lives on the surface, and it's, that was the idea behind this what we're doing now is we want to share those stories. We want to share those stories, how they shaped us and led us to where we are today. But possibly by sharing the stories we have, we can guide people in their own journeys, because you've had mentors and I've had mentors, and those stories aren't written down on pieces of paper. They aren't
Yeah.
written down in books. You can't just go and read up or research it. You can't use you know AI, ChatGPT to go and ask things. It's you have knowledge that only through these type of discussions can you ever possibly share. And I suppose that's what we're trying to do here. Roger, this has been, I've actually thoroughly enjoyed this. I must be honest, and it's been a great second session, and I think for our next session we'll reverse the roles, and
Correct.
you
Yeah.
you can ask me some of those tough questions. But I've known you for many years, but I still don't really know you. And wow, I'm sitting here learning more about you, and it's great. And I hope
Thank you.
for people listening here, they've got a little bit more insight and a little bit more knowledge. So thank you.
No, thank you. And, that's our plan, right? Is to just keep the practice going, do it every week, evolve it, get feedback, and just get better and better. Put ourselves under pressure, put ourselves out there, and just get better. And certainly for me as well, I want to learn more about the whole concept of pressure, and how to. I've done a little bit of research, but it's fascinating, and it still astounds me that, like, you know you can get scared of, like, standing up in public and talking. It still astounds me, the power of that social pressure and the way that controls you is pretty remarkable. So yeah, I'm looking forward to using this as a vehicle as well to learn more
There's that
about the whole concept.
that list of things that frighten people the most, and it's like the death of a spouse or a partner or a family member. It's moving house, and then the third highest one is public speaking.
Mm,
So,
yeah,
so yeah.
fear of humiliation. Yep. Mm, anyway, yeah.
Okay, Roger.
Okay, great, Pat. Well,
Um,
yeah, thanks for your
yeah,
time.
that was
And
awesome. Thank you so much. And
nice.
yeah, we'll continue the stories in the next episode.
Yeah, we'll flip it around. Awesome. Okay, Pat,
Brilliant.
your time.
Cheers, Roger.
Chat
Take
next
care.
week. Cheers. Bye.
Bye bye.